but also just like that wasn't the environment I wanted to spend another 20 years in. Like cold-blooded heart. And, that's another turn-off. I like the kind of Western Coast attitude, or maybe even the Florida laid back, and, that's the way I'd rather live life. So, it's a whole bunch of sensibilities that you realize what D.C. is. You have to be a certain personality to endure it, frankly. I mean, it just grates on you, and after a while, the good people do leave. Most of them have already gone. So you can pretty much, determine whether the person's a real lizard by how long they've been in D.C., how long they can stand it, because you have to keep your mouth shut about so many abuses over and over that anybody who's been there for a long period of time knows where the bodies are buried and how many are stacked up and how many inside deals have taken place and, who got offed and assassinated, whose careers and lives are ruined. I mean, it's really ugly. It can get really ugly.
I think this is germane. That's the reason I'm bringing it up. I mean, not just for old, war stories and stuff like that, but, I mean, I went to some places, and there were some people there, I'll just say guys especially, because I was alone at the time, and, they would ask you questions where they're trying to feel you out, and it, and, they think they're being really clever, but it's like, no, you're not. And then they would tell you, watch out for this guy, watch what you say. And, I'd look at them going like, excuse my French, but what is your fucking problem, man? I mean, it's a party. I don't want to hear about this shit. I came in to have a good time. But, I mean, did you ever get yourself, you and your wife, ever be in an environment where there was that kind of thing going on? I mean...
Well, I just remember certain conversations. I've been to lots of parties in D.C., lots of cocktail parties in Georgetown and, other events, and you don't talk about certain things. There are certain subjects that aren't covered, and, some people are less than forthright about, who they're, if they're working for a senator or whatever, things are very hush-hush because they could say anything they could say could be damaging. So, you just don't talk about it. But, there's interesting conversations. People talk a lot about Swiss bank accounts. They talk a lot about how the government is in league with a lot like AID, American Aid, and all kinds of other things are actually working with, international agencies to screw the American taxpayer. So what you would think is that these representatives of D.C. are, working in the taxpayer interest, but they actually work with places in like Nigeria or Central Asia to, create phony investment models and then skim stuff off the top for both parties, both the guy in D.C. and, the guy in Kazakhstan, for example, or something like that. They'll put up phony bid for $100 million, get it done for 50, and then there's $50 million for everybody to split. So, things like that happen all the time or constantly are happening. Mm-hmm. Probably the same thing that happens in the Defense Department, which I really wasn't privy to. I was really much more on the congressional side of things, looking into that.
Well, no, and as we were talking about, and that is just a general feel you get for a place. I had popped off to you the last time we were on, and saying, I was leaving the FBI building, the Hoover building at 14th in Pennsylvania, heading for a bus to take me to Alexandria. And as I'm walking there, like with my clothes like stuck to me, because you know how the summers are there too. I mean, my God, that there is no doubt in the world that even though they paved that place with concrete, it is a swamp. That was a swamp.
Certainly.
Oh God, it was horrible.
Yeah, the weather's not very nice in D.C. It's terrible in the summer, and in the winters are extremely cold. It's not temperate at all.
No, I mean, when we were there, a whole bunch of us, we used to play basketball every evening, and you wonder sometimes what the benefits were for obviously raising your aerobic pulmonary rate when you have an inversion there, for 2 months straight. I mean, the air is horrible. It's like, yeah, this is a great idea. We're working out, but what in the world are we breathing? But as I was saying to you also, like walking down Pennsylvania Avenue, this is what D.C.'s like. I hear these trumpets blare. I'm going, what the hell is this? And I take a look around, and here comes Queen Liz out of the City Hall. And I'm looking at him going, oh, just another day in D.C., and off I went. Now her appearance in D.C. makes another whole bunch of difference, but...
Right. No, I mean, those things happen. You get pulled over, you see people drive by, there's all kinds of, not parades, but, limos that have escorts driving around, and, I've seen presidents drive by on the street, and you see all the luminaries that you see on TV, meet the press, and all these guys walking around the train station or, wherever. I mean, it's pretty tight. Capitol Hill is pretty condensed. It's a pretty dense area. If you walk around there, you see almost, congressmen, if you recognize their faces, people who are on TV frequently.
Well, a couple of things, and we'll get on to other matters. But, I mean, I like people to understand who haven't been there, haven't worked there. I mean, you may have been there, but you haven't worked there. When I visited in 1970, when my dad gave me the big 9-year birthday celebration thing, it was really cool. But going back there, I don't know. I mean, I've been in New York. I mean, I was growing up in New York. You're not going to shock me with anything. But in D.C., it was just something like, I don't know, sleazy. One of the things I thought that was such a great metaphor for what that city's like, and I think you're going to remember this. There's a lot of homeless people there. It's really a nasty place, honestly. I mean, criminal-wise, it's probably as dense as any place with few.
Oh, yeah.
But do you remember, though, whenever they're going to have a function, they would chase all the homeless people back on D Avenue so they can sleep in the hot air grates there?
Yes, I do. I mean, there would be whole encampments on these hot air grates off the mall, and then something important would happen, and they'd all be hurried off, and then they'd come back after the event. So, yeah, I do remember that. I can't remember what the event was when I was out there that something like that happened, where they just took 5,000 homeless people and transported them out. I forgot what it was for.
Furloughed, yeah.
Yeah, but I remember that happening. It definitely happens. They don't really give a crap about the impoverished people of D.C.
In those days, I was living in Laurel, and another guy and myself would take the train into Union Station, and of course, we would take, for whatever reason, we just took D all the way to the Bureau, and I would look at all these, homeless people. I'm going, this is the freaking District of Columbia. This is supposed to be the all-time gem, and, I mean, what is this all about? I mean, not that I'm down on homeless people. Well, no way. But, in the district, you would think you'd want it to be a poster child for, gee, isn't America great? And it's absolute, or maybe what it really is an accurate microcosm of what America really is.
Yeah, I mean, it probably is. If you're greedy, you don't just want to get all the money. You want to make sure the other guy doesn't have anything. So if you're a real nut job like the people who love DCR, it's a confirmation of success when you walk by a guy who's begging for money and you have it all, I guess. I don't know.
But did you and your wife have discussions? Did you both realize this is probably not the answer and decide you had to, basically coal in the dog's piss on a fire and get on out of there?
Yeah, I think that it was mutual. I mean, I think that she saw things that, I think she had a nice time. I think she worked for a congressman, so she had it pretty easy. She was a scheduler, and I think, just a variety of different things. Whereas, I think that we just wanted to live the rest of our lives on the West Coast, and, it just wasn't bad. It was a great experience in a lot of ways. I mean, you learn a lot from, disillusionment. So,
But now,
I think that, it was a good choice to leave and, not stay there forever.
Did you complete your law school in that area?
Yeah, so I completed my law school and then took the bar, passed the bar in California.
Okay.
And, right after I finished law school, essentially.
The reason I bring that up also is that even though for the most part we feel like Shakespeare about lawyers.
Well, no, you should, as you should. As you should. I mean, I was, like I said, it's pretty cutthroat. I mean, those people kill their grandma for better GPA.
No, but where I'm going with this also is that you have a pretty analytical eye, and you have to be as taciturn as possible when you get involved in the business that you were in. So for you to say to yourself, you know what, I got this all together, but I don't think so, not here. My point is this: did you realize that the whole place ran on duplicity for the most part, and you were probably your soul?
Oh yeah. Those people have lost their soul, all of them there. They, like I said, they've seen so many murders and abuses and thefts and misuses of public funds and wrongdoing that there's nobody there that's, people who they say they're going to be your savior, I wouldn't bet on it. So if they can survive there, it's, and not say anything, that's the whole thing, is that a lot of those people have to keep tight lips and then not tell the truth. And so you have to really be, I don't know how those people, they don't have a conscience like I think a normal person would have, I think, in a lot of ways. So, yeah, I mean, you'd have to sell your soul to and not even care about it to really love DC. Not even at the highest level, but just to kind of survive and make a living there.
I didn't think a whole lot about it, William, but I'm going to tell you because of your experience and because it brings back this one memory of a movie, which I thought was kind of interesting for myself for other reasons. Remember that movie with Tom Cruise where he's a lawyer in D.C. with Gene Hackman? You remember that at all?
Sounds familiar. What was the name of it?
Yes, I can't come up with it. It was just one of those things where the guy said, boy, this is the great life, and then he realized what he was in, and, man, try to get yourself out of it,
Right.
And I just didn't know if that, resonated with you. Obviously, if it did hit a chord, it would probably...
Oh, I don't think so. I never practiced there. I knew I never was going to, so I think that, I had seen things inside of... I had done some jobs working inside of some of these law. I can't remember what the name was, Baker and Botts or one of these law firms that was doing it. I can't remember the tobacco litigation, and I mean, it was incredible. These guys were defending the tobacco companies, and I went to this party of theirs, and they were just living it up, living off the tobacco money and having these great parties with, great bottles of wine. I just knew I couldn't do it. In that law firm, it was interesting, cigarettes didn't cause cancer. So they maintained that lie, and everybody could smoke inside the law firm because they were getting their money from the tobacco company. Right. This is not a joke. So you could smoke at your desk, and, of course, cigarettes are a causative factor. So they were living a lie and maintaining this whole baloney, but they were making millions and millions of dollars protecting a industry that was falsely labeling their stuff. I mean, it's just crazy.
All right, well, think about this. Think about when you were in high school and we were all going through our civics and our history classes. I remember thinking about something, and I think I might even ask the question, and I didn't really get a good answer back, and because I really didn't care about school when I was in high school, it was like, yeah, okay, fine. But the one thing that always struck me was this whole idea of lobbyists, and I was like, oh, that's okay? All right, now let me get this straight. In any other venue, that would be considered bribery.
Right.
But lobbyists are okay. Is that somewhere in the Constitution I didn't find? Did that strike you also? It's like, what do we...
Yeah, there's different versions of the Constitution. I don't know if you... Just like the Bible, everybody reads a different version. That's a joke. I didn't see a lot of lobbying, but I knew some people who were on that side in public relations, and they're the bottom of the barrel, man.
But, we were all told this. It's right out there in the open, like a 700-pound gorilla, and actually, in this case, nobody's making believe it's not there. It's there, and yet I look at teachers, and I'm not laying it on them necessarily, but it's like, at what point do people just start to say, hey, wait a minute, man. These guys are loaded with cash, and they're going up there and plying congressmen and senators with this stuff, and it's okay? Where did that happen? And it's... You know what I mean? It's one of those questions that never gets aired out, and it goes on, and then it becomes part of the furniture. You just really don't pay attention to it. But I always found that as like, who's kidding who here about what this is actually, about? And you saw it firsthand also down there as well.
Right, yeah. And most of the congressmen, they have people on their staff who are old buddies from the old days, that those are the guys who take the manila envelopes. It's never the congressman. So it's always... if there's something like that pops up, the other guy is always going to do the discussions and where the money goes, and the congressman stays, clean. And if something goes wrong, it's always the other guy's fault, but that other guy's never being watched by anybody because they don't think it's him. So that's the way money gets transferred and value gets, apportioned under the table.
Okay, we are at about the bottom of the half hour. Well, it isn't the bottom of the hour. And we're with William Ramsey. His website is occult911.com. We told you about the books, about the DVDs, but we're just going to let him speak to it a bit, and then we're going to get back on track here. Bill, let's do a little business and tell us about what the websites are like. And I'll tell you, if you can, a little thumbnail, if you will, not only about the book, but about the DVDs.
Yeah, even when I was in law school, I did a lot of reading on outside reading away from what would be called the mainstream media on a variety of different subjects. And that would be things like Waco and what happened at Ruby Ridge and what happened in Oklahoma City and that bombing. And so I'd always had a sensibility that there was usually more to the story than the cover story. And so I was a researcher into 9/11. I thought I was always a believer in what happened at 9/11. But as I researched and saw a few things and, realized something didn't add up, I realized that was a fraud too in 2003 and 2004, and there's a lot of backstory. But basically, I recognized that there were these numerical values that were woven into the event that didn't seem to be at random over time. They didn't make sense. So I did research that led me back to Crowley, and I realized that Crowley and his ideology influenced the events of 9/11 and, what's loosely termed the New World Order. So I wrote a book just out of conscience. After I realized it and didn't sleep for 3 months, I decided to go back and read what Crowley really said. So the overlap of what Crowley's ideas were and what's happening to the world are so similar that, I couldn't escape the notion that there was a tie, and I still can't. And so anyway, I wrote the book, and I started to research because I had thought myself, I was pretty proud of myself thinking that I had knew a lot of stuff, and the reality is I didn't really know anything. So I started reading the occult and start seeing stuff in the Hollywood, and, there's a whole subtext of this occult information that's influential. Unfortunately, the people who are involved in the cult tend to have an undue influence upon the world in a very negative sense. So anyway, I wrote the book. I have 500 footnotes available on my website. You can get it on Amazon, or you can get a copy of it on Kindle. And then my movies are also available. You can watch it on video on demand. That's on Amazon, or you can buy it on my website too. And those just kind of verify the information that I had in the book.
Also, please touch upon the DVDs, which we have not done before. If you can just give me an idea about what's going on there.
Well, the DVDs, like I said, there's the Occult Hollywood, and then The Prophet of Evil is the information that is in my book, but more visual. So It kind of runs alongside. I tried to pull out the salient quotes and elements that I thought were very important, that you could put into a 90-minute documentary. And I just show that these numbers are important to Crowley and his system, and that they're inculcated into the events of 9/11, 11/77, 93, and 175.
Okay. And I know that we had talked before about Occult Hollywood and some of the work that Valentini had done that you had seen also. And
and that definitely was an inspiration partially for my work, and I didn't put enough of his stuff into my movie, and I should actually put together an addendum and attach it to your website just to show that there's even more stuff there. Anyway, sorry.
No, not at all. And in fact, I'm glad you said that, because I've not been in touch with him for over 2 or so years. Something took place. I don't know what it was. I'm not saying everything's nefarious, but because sometimes people just say, look, this is crazy, this is too deep, and I'm out of here. John was such a good guy, and he lent so much to that research, and then, bang. I mean, were you ever in touch with him via email? No, never. No, I didn't even know the guy, but I had seen it on your site. But see, that didn't lead me forward. It was just, I think some of the influences were seeing that 11 was important. I had read something by a guy by Captain May, who was, he had something called Ghost Troop, but I don't think he got my opinion, he didn't get the exact tie to Crowley. No.
Because 93 is a Crowley number. It's nowhere else in the occult. Crowley was the person who made that determination through the Kabbalah that 93 was important. And so he never really made those correlations, but he saw that 11 was important, and he didn't attach it to the occult like I did, or the direct focus on Crowley. But so I had seen this around, but I knew very little about the occult. I didn't understand it, and now that I understand it, I see it everywhere: Harry Potter, movies, you know, I have the reason why I called the Occult Hollywood Volume 1 is I'm working on Volume 2, and the Harry Potter books are just like a child's elementary introduction into the occult. I mean, it's incredible.
Welcome to
J.K. Rowling is deeply knowledgeable about the occult. She's not even like a half-wit. She knew everything with that first book. It's incredible.
This doesn't really matter, but I think a lot of people also suspect her as not being alone in her authorship, shall we say.
I wouldn't believe it. I bet she's a figurehead. It's the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone is a foundational entry into occult doctrine. The Philosopher's Stone, and Crowley makes determinations based upon that. He says that the Philosopher's Stone is that the perfection of the interior heart of an individual, and perfecting of his will. I can't remember the direct quote, but it's a very crucial foundational notion within occult practice, or the path of the left-hand path, and she lays it all out. Nicholas Flamel, all these great occultists are referenced in her works. Sirius, Draco. I mean, it goes on. I don't even have it all figured out yet, but I'm commencing a study on it, and it'll be in my next movie.
All right. Also, folks, I would think give us a couple more minutes, and if you're given one to call in and chime in, by all means. Also, I'm going to embark on asking a line of questions where we can really get down to the nitty-gritty about this stuff, because there's a very ugly side to what's going on in the United States. It's got nothing to do with parties. It's got everything to do with principalities of darkness, shall we say. Would you be comfortable with that statement?
Absolutely.
So if you want to, by all means do so, but give us a couple of more minutes yet so you can find out where we're going to go with this. But if it's okay with you at this juncture, William, and if it's not, let me know. And we lost you in the room, by the way. I don't know if that's deliberate or not, but if you can, get back in there. No problem.
I'm pacing around my place. I'm going to go back.
No, I mean, you just walked in the door and got this going. I appreciate the fact that you hit the ground running and could do the interview. But, I mean, I'm looking at your site, and one of the things that's interesting is that video that's up there with, what was that? That was Glenn Ford from the Brotherhood of the Bell. Was that right?
Right. Yep.
There's some of these movies that passed through in the 70s. Let's not forget, I mean, there were more obvious ones like Rosemary's Baby,
right.
The Exorcist,
right.
Excuse me, and then there were other ones like this, pardon me,
which was a TV like...
Yeah. I
right.
mean, what was that about? I mean, I remember seeing it, but, there's the point. I don't know, what am I? I'm 20? Oh, that's funny. Okay, great. They were all wearing black suits. What's dinner?
Right. And the thing is that I don't think people recognize the importance of the secret societies back then. They were probably just boys' clubs, and they were part of a club system. But the secret societies have grown in power, in their power in darkness, and now they've expressed themselves in these acts that are incredible. So now people recognize, these aren't benign. Masonry is not benign. These secret societies are not benign at all. And it's an unfortunate reality, but that Masonic Center you have, or anybody could have down the street, is not a place of peace and equanimity between people.
Well, when you realize that something's secret, it's like it says in Scripture, if you have to purse your lips, then, something's probably up. What was it? It was the wink of an eye, I think it said in the Old Testament, and something to that effect, and it's like, okay, so we understand this is not good, because if it were, it'd be out in sunshine. I also think there are some societies, and Paul Sandhu, whom I respect immensely, we had discussions back in around 04 and 05, and he's, and I was like really high on Cecil Rhodes, and I read the Anglo-American Establishment. I read Tragedy and Hope, and he was all over Rhodes and the Round Table that was given over to Milner in his kindergarten, and but he said to me, he goes, look, if they give it, whatever they give you the most of, it's not the thing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So everybody's
that's an insightful statement.
Actually, it was. I mean, if it isn't a big aha to people, well, it was to me, and it crystallized a lot of things. And that is, look, if they're going to give you the information, it isn't where it's at. You got to go someplace else. And I think that's accurate. And I thank you for confirming that as well.
That's confirmed through my own research. I mean, all those things are important, but there's even deeper secret societies. I mean, you can see one of my articles, like on the signs of silence that we talked about before.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
There's doctrines that aren't even publicly acknowledged by what would be called conspiracy researchers. I mean, I think the signs of silence, indicates that there's even darker themes and doctrines that are really unknown to 99% of the public.
Yeah,
because I don't know anybody who's written that type of material showing that this doctrine of secrecy isn't just part of the modern secret society system, but a part of the occult that goes back into other civilizations, at least, in certain permutations.
I definitely agree. One of the things I think about is I don't bang on the lower level Masons because I think a lot of times they're held out as a punching bag to keep people from getting to where the real power is. I mean, when you go up, obviously, into higher Scottish Rite Freemasonry, things get a little interesting, and who knows what lies beyond that.
Well, that's like Crowley level, like Crowley and the Golden Dawn. All these guys were Masons. Even in the OTO, they were all 33rd degree Masons who went beyond. That's where their real danger lies, is that the Masonry is just a stepping stone to something even more dark and the deeper level of the occult. And these guys, the scary thing is those guys are intelligent. They know how to misconstrue symbols to the profane. They know how to keep their mouth shut. They know doctrines of mind control that they don't share with anybody. They know how to act like a chameleon in public. And most people will never recognize or realize that. And I don't blame them. But there's a lot of current underneath that surface that, I tried to mine in my book. I don't even know if I captured it all. I could have probably written another 50 pages on the Golden Dawn and the OTO just to show their influence. The OTO influenced Hitler, as a matter of fact. Parsifal was written by a OTO member that Hitler, he used to go to these shows and go into a trance. So there's a lot of deeper connections that the public doesn't even want to make that leap. And I mean, Hitler was probably the linchpin of the 20th century. Everything led up to him, and things led from him. So, and this is a master occultist Satanist that a lot of people just think he's a German nationalist, which was only about half of the story.
But don't you think, William, that all the people that were in the positions they were in were there for a reason, and it was not an accident, and they were controlled? I'm talking about Hitler. I'm talking about Churchill.
No. Huh? No. I think that Hitler was very independent in a lot of ways because he did such radical things. I don't think somebody was telling him to invade Russia, and his ideas of world revolution were consistent, strangely, with communism. But I do think that communism was influenced from the outside. I do think Nazism was influenced from the outside, no doubt. But I do think, at certain points, these guys get big enough for their britches where they can think they can become independent. Independent from the bankers who finance them and from the military that supported them, and so totally controlled Hitler. I think his only control was powers and principalities. I don't think that it was, these bankers, although they do have an influence. But if they're Illuminists, they have similar ideologies. So I don't know.
Well, it's true, and I mean, in the end, those who need to make money do make money. Doesn't matter who wins and who loses. The one thing I thought was a little incredible with Hitler, if he wasn't throwing the fight, if you will, and that was one, going against Russia in the wintertime, which would become the wintertime. They went in the fall, and that was a mistake. That's, quote, a mistake, I would say. That also Napoleon, man. It's like, look, you don't go to Russia at that time. What are you, nuts? Yeah. Unless you're being driven. And the other,
they both got started late.
You would think that would be a really stupid, sophomoric decision to make militarily, like, oh, let's go to Russia now. Oh, no. Why can't we wait till, like April?
Right. The
other thing is, and the thing I can't take, and it's only me, and I mean, you can, by all means opine on this, and that is, I hear all these stories about the Normandy invasion and the Fuhrer didn't want to be woken up. And I'm like, I know he's crazy. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think, William?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of odd things that happened in World War II. He could have destroyed a lot of the English army, at when they were trying to.
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, Dunkirk was one of the places.
Yeah, Dunkirk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So he could have gone in for the kill, and there's a lot of strange events. But all in all, I don't think that he was. I don't know. I don't buy the outside influence theory as much as these guys are corrupt. Although there's been some good research. I don't know. It's hard to say. I know that they're influenced by the outside. Lenin, Stalin, Trotsky, Hitler were all financed or involved. The West was involved in their ascension. So there's really no doubt about that. And even Lenin, and some researchers that I've read, Lenin took some of the money that he stole from the White Russians and gave it back to the Masonic buildings, Masonic Center in Paris. So here's the Masonic connection again, and that's
all right.
Pretty. And same with actually, I think Trotsky wrote a book about Masonry, if I recollect. His real name it wasn't Trotsky; it was like Blonstein, or I forgot what his name was. But and once you kind of apply that occult lens, you see that there's definitely an international connection. So
we were laughing at the fact. I don't remember I did this on air or not. I think I did. And the fact, yeah, I did. We're looking at Lenin, who was duped $20 million in gold by Western bankers right here in the United States, and then Trotsky was like nurturing his whole deal on the east side of Manhattan. And
Schiff.
Yeah.
He used to. I think he lived in Jacob Schiff's house.
That's beautiful.
Schiff is then Schiff. What is his grandson marries one of the Gore daughters or something like that. That's so crazy.
Well, and Schiff's the one. I didn't want to mention the name, not for anything, but I just didn't do it. But Schiff's the one that was supposedly also targeted as the one who gave the $20 million to Lenin.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't doubt it. I thought it was the German intelligence that gave the $20 million in gold bullion for Lenin. Wasn't there a famous train ride into St. Petersburg that Lenin took?
Yeah, it was a train ride that had to avoid Germany, I think, to get in there. Yeah, if
I
remember
have
correctly.
To go back and look at my books.
Yeah, me too. I know. But
Schiff was also notorious for lending Japan money to continue the fight against the Russians in, I think it was 1905. So the Japanese have a strange history about bankers out of New York because they had there was a spot in their time where they were getting loans from New York banks to support their war power. So, it's the banker the banking history is crucial. So anyway, it's kind of.
But that's the story of the world. As jaded as I am, and I'm okay with that. When I look at the whole history of the world, people want to get into these things about liberty and revolution. It's like, no, it's about the money. It's about business. It's about murder. Yep. That's it.
Yep.
All right, now what I want to do is also, I want to share something with you, then I want to get into a very heavy question, if you're okay with that.
Fire away.
All right, good. We're going to take a break at the top of the hour, but we're...
Have I ever avoided any of your questions? Maybe
no, you haven't. You've tried to. You've been a gentleman, but I'm an absolute idiot, and I will go anywhere.
You're an information junkie. That's what it is. That's okay.
Oh, you know what? My mother told me that like probably at like 14 I'd lose my temper. Well, that didn't work.
Yes.
Okay. Right. But hence Vyzygoth.
She was thinking positively, right?
God bless her. Yes, she did. Right up to the day. But it didn't work out. All right. I have to share something with you because it's like the history of the world gets more and more interesting. And I really do believe it is interesting. And some listeners to the show have been doing their own research. And the stuff they pull up is just like absolutely gems. But I'm looking at something with regard to, we went through this thing about did the Russians really send fleets to New York and San Francisco? Well, hell yes, they did. And not only that, but I'm looking at some of these stories, and they're just like fawning all over the Russians. I mean, in New York, well, we had a parade down Fifth Avenue when we had this banquet. All right, fine. But then in the meantime, in like October, I believe, October of 1863, please explain this to me. We've got the steamship Wyoming, USS Wyoming, blasting the Japanese with the French and the Dutch. And it's like, are you kidding me? I mean, the Union was in a war, right, to save its sovereignty or its divisibility. And we've got warships in Japan duking with them. And I'm like, when did this happen? And, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like, what is really going on, folks? And, of course, all these things have been sanitized from us. But the thing we're having a little joke about right now, William, is that, yes, in fact, we found documentation that the Tsar sent what he called squadrons, naval, to San Francisco and New York. And that is completely gone, not a mention. If I'm wrong, correct me. When you were in high school, did you ever see anything like this? And if you were in college, did you ever hear about this?
No.
And it's like, dudes, why is this being excised? Why don't we hear about this? Is it like no big deal? No, I think it is. It's almost like you can't think anything good about the Russians because we're going to fight their ass or at least fake it, for like a century after World War II. Damn. So anyway, I mean, I like that because I think, it's fascinating, but it also tells us that we have been kept from a lot of good stuff. Now,
indeed. Absolutely.
All right, now here's where I, want to get off to this. Now, here's somebody like yourself who's a very taciturn person, somebody who is willing to shape their minds in the form of legalese. And then you start to realize that something's going on. Now, for as much as you want to share with us, when did you get saved, if you don't mind telling us, and where was that in the timeline of you going into law?
Saved as in a religious sense?
In the sense of, yes, you took Jesus Christ as your Savior.
Well, I think that, I was raised a Catholic. I think I went through kind of a religious, event, maybe 17 or 18, where I became a Christian outside of the Catholic Church.
Bible believer?
A Bible believer? Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't think the Catholic Church really adheres. This is not a disparagement on Catholics in general, but the institution itself does not adhere to the fundamental teachings as written in the gospel. So, that was something I came to at around that age. And, I'm not really hold the doctrine of like I was saved like a Southern Baptist as I guess my predominant Christian ethic. I do think that you get salvation in this world and the next, but I definitely had an intense religious experience, and so for that affirmed my cosmology, and then just the cosmology of the Bible, Old Testament and New, is correct in general, and I can't say that I lived this devout Christian life in any sense, externally pious or anything like that.
That's okay.
But
you had a conscience and you had a Holy Spirit in you, and you started to realize that. I mean, that's the only way I can, for being me.
I think the interesting thing for me was that when I was young at 17 or 18, I realized that what I had learned and a lot of things that I was taught and a lot of the examples that I was provided were wrong. And I had to change and go out and find it for myself. And so that's kind of what led me to, reach out and be curious, just to, at a fundamental level, just curious, read everything I could. I was willing to be a contrarian. I was willing to, I would never read these books, or, these aren't, that would make me want to read them and either accept them as something that was interesting or, discount them. But I'd absorb them, okay, that is bogus. Like I read, William Pierce, that awful book, a white racist book. Like most people, it's terrible, but I read it, and it was a piece of garbage. It's awful, but at least I read it to see what he said,
The Turner Diaries?
Yeah, the Turner Diaries, that's right. So, like most people, and I read some of Mein Kampf, and that's awful and atrocious as well, but I'm willing to see what these people think. Anyway, so it made me curious. That's what I kind of went to law school for the wrong reasons. I didn't see it as a training school as much as I should have. I saw it as a place of knowledge, but most of my other cohorts just saw it as a way to status and money. Anyway, so I had a different value system that, it caused me to, make decisions that probably weren't in my best financial interest or, for my own personal safety and or well-being. But, I feel like, I've said my piece, and I was always a loudmouth about all that stuff when I was in D.C., like this is obscene, and that's why, that's why the evil eye of Sauron took its eye upon me. So, I'd say that I'm trying to abide by, Christian morals and ethics, but, I think that, I do believe in Jesus Christ, and I try to do it. I'm not a preacher out there,
No. But
all my church.
What I'm asking you is this. I mean, you and I have both come to a certain point. You have taken a great deal of time, and rightfully so, and thankfully so, to write what you have. Somebody doesn't do that unless they've been profoundly moved. And, I mean, I've done the radio show now. In fact, actually, what are we doing today? Tomorrow is the beginning of the 10th year of this.
Wow.
But the thing is, we do this because we've been struck by something. And I'll tell you, William, when we first began the show, Harry and myself, we didn't really do it under a Christian aegis, not at all. In fact, even if I even said a little bit, Harry was like, not that Harry's a bad guy. It was just that we're looking for a little, audience, and you're going to constrict it if you do that. And I understood what he said.
Right.
So, okay, fine. But what happened was, when I started getting into this research, enough to make me begin the show, I'm looking at my wife, and she said, I'm going, you know what? Now I understand it. I mean, I've been a deadhead. I mean, I've been backslidden. But now I realize that this NWO drives with the Bible. I mean, it does.
Right.
So, I mean,
I agree.
All right, now, well, here's where I want to go. Enough about me. But now you've come to a point. I mean, you just didn't say, okay, and you did some interviews or you started your own radio show. You actually pounded the keyboard and did a lot of good work, and now you've gone to the DVDs. That isn't because somebody isn't fueled by a certain thing. And so I'm not going to say anything more about it, but just tell us about that experience, because that just doesn't happen with a little bit of curiosity.
Well, I just say, like I said, I read the stuff myself. I saw a different view than people who were spouting on about Crowley, how he was a liberator of humanity and how he was really about, becoming your best you. And I saw a different side there that was evil. And, I think that the people who follow his doctrines are evil, and there are people who've walked into that spider's web unknowingly and have had their lives literally destroyed, ruined. They've gone to wars that are bogus. They've lost their minds. They're committing suicide. There's 6,000 servicemen committing suicide per month in the United States. They're miserable. They're suffering from PTSD in this whole kind of world order that's similar to like Hitler's evil world order. And it's a serious issue. And I want people to know that a lot of the people who are telling them that this is about liberty and fighting them over there, or else they'll be over here, that it's a bunch of fallacious lies, and it's demonic. Frankly, it's evil. 7/7, the London bombings is evil. 9/11 is evil, and people have to know it. And I wrote my book so that people could see it with evidence. I wrote it with kind of a legal mindset. I didn't just put it down on paper and say, here it is. I put 500 footnotes. You can check them all. They're all accurate. You can look at the books. You can see it. And people with discernment who really want to know the truth will know the truth. I have not had one person say, this book is a lie. Not one. I have not had one person say, I want my money back. I haven't had one person say, what you've said isn't worth anything. So, I think it's important for people to see, and it flies right in line with all the prophecies of the Bible. And, it may not have captured everything, but it's an attempt to do my best with limited resources to show people the proof and evidence that, something very evil is taking place in the world.
Well, I'm not going to kick you off on the big time stuff because we're going to come up in about 8 minutes of the hour. But I do want to ask you this, because it's because of what happened to me. I mean, at a certain point, I won't, I'm going to the whole 9 yards. But I mean, I saw stuff, I heard stuff, I was in places, and I was starting to write a book called While We Slept, which has, somebody's already written that. But I mean, just with myself, about, people going, well, how the hell did you get the way you were? Well, this is the way it happened. And
right.
What's funny is that when they hear you're an athlete and all that other stuff, and you're like, they don't think that you should be there. And it's like, you don't understand. You have a brain. If you're curious, you have an intellectual curiosity, you're going to look at stuff. But the thing that bothered me the most And remember, I grew up in a time when I was in high school, and assassinations were like, I don't know, I mean, they were like monthly.
Dime a dozen.
Yeah, and we're sitting there, and we're all just like, we're pubescent, adolescents.
Right.
And we don't know where the hell we're going to go, but we know we don't want to go to Vietnam. And we're looking at all these assassinations, and I remember going home with my buddies and saying, can we make any sense out of this? And it's like,
right.
No, we can't, so what's the next thing? Let's go and go to McDonald's. And we went off. And so that's where it was. But you know what? For some of us, it never went away. For some of us, we didn't forget some of the stuff that, like, hey, wait a second, that just didn't work out there. So up to the hour, and I'm not going to, bound you by that by any means. If you go longer, that's fine. But what I want to say to you is, I had a moment, and it happened to me in about 2000 with my wife and such, and I said, it's about time for me to take a look and not just accept all the stuff that I just threw under the rug. Maybe it's time to just take a look and find out where the hell we really are. And she was, like, supportive. I mean, I didn't get crazy about it, but here's where I'm throwing it to you. You had to have a moment like that, whether it's that day or a couple of weeks. And if you did, when did you break it to your wife, like, you know what, this is really nuts?
Yeah, I think that she just knew. She knew that I was a reader, and she saw that, what I was up to. And, I mean, it's just something that I was impelled to do, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind or something like that, I just kept writing my book, and I didn't really know I was going to write a book, but I was like, oh my gosh, this information is very important, and so I just did it. I wasn't it was an unnerving process. It wasn't pleasant at all, but, and it is fraught with no little risk, but, I have in my past, I think that I've had experiences that may have prepared me to a certain extent that I have not disclosed, but I just did it, and I'm glad I did.
All right, but there was a time when she knew it, and I don't mean to hammer on this, except for the fact that I want to share with folks also. There are some people that have come aboard of late, and I'm happy to have them. In fact, you could say I'd be happy to have anyone. But the thing is, I mean, what we do here is not in the mainstream of the Patriot movement. So, I mean, we are now basically consigned to the corner of a table. But that's all right, because there's a time when you have to be honest with yourself, and I don't mean, like I said, to hammer about when you had this epiphany and how you shared it with your wife, because I had one with my wife, and it was a process of like, you know what, take a look at this, take a look at this. I mean, we worked jobs, we didn't get crazy about it. But when she saw that I was serious about it, and she knew I didn't like dealing bullshit, excuse me, she was like, okay, I'll take a look. And it's like, wow, what in the world are we into? And
right.
A lot of couples out there, William, are going through stuff. I've seen one...
Destroyed marriages, absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I mean, I can't say it hasn't come with no little strain. I mean, it's not happy material. It's not easy, particularly when you add to the fact that they're screwing up the economy, and it's a lot harder to make ends meet, and there's bogus taxes, and there's unnecessary debts, and then you roll on top of it this powers and principalities moment. I can understand. I mean, these are very, very difficult times, and added to the fact that you have this kind of evil system, and the system right now is evil. It's not arguable. It's a time for people to really hunker down and, have a bunker mentality with their families. And it's unfortunate, and it's sad that we've come to that. But, our political leaders and the religious leaders are just, I mean, I don't know who's worse. I don't know who's worse, the evil people or the idiots and the people who go along with them. And that's an honest statement. I honestly mean that. I don't know who's worse.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I do not know.
We're going to get to that if you don't mind. Some other things also about maybe our misconceptions about the United States and all that it has to do with or without a connection to Jehovah. We're going to go for a break, William. We're going to take about 5 minutes. If you don't mind, folks, we'll be back then, and also we'll open the phones up, and you're all free to call in and ask your questions. And, William, I'll see you in about a couple of minutes.
All right, folks.